One evening, one fateful decision, and Joseph's life shattered into before and after. What began as an ideal routine, work, family, Thursdays spent on separate pursuits, concealed secrets that would dismantle a marriage, obliterate trust, and lead to devastating consequences. How far would you go to uncover the truth, and at what cost? This gripping story dives into the depths of betrayal, pain, and retribution. My dear friend, be sure to subscribe to my channel if this is your first time here, and give your royal like to this video. On Thursday evening, Joseph sat at the dining table, his gaze fixed on a beer bottle in front of him. He had deliberately limited himself to just 6 bottles, not wanting to risk overindulgence in case the night took an unexpected turn. From upstairs, the abrupt cessation of music signaled that his wife had nearly finished packing. Thursdays were typically dedicated to work for Joseph, as his wife often hosted social gatherings for her friends. Meanwhile, their daughter, Whitney, would stay with his parents, allowing his wife to unwind with her colleagues over drinks. This arrangement allowed Joseph to extend his office hours on Thursdays, using the time to catch up on paperwork. In exchange, he left early on Fridays to spend time with his family. It seemed like a well-oiled routine, a balance between his professional responsibilities, his parents' enjoyment of Whitney's company, and his wife's social needs. At least, that's what Joseph believed. Yet as his wife stepped into the bathroom, his mind wandered to Tuesday's lunch with Rosalie. He recalled savoring the delicious sandwiches and making a mental note to revisit the store or explore their delivery options. As he adjusted his position to maintain a view of the restaurant door, a familiar figure walked in. Rising from his seat, he waved to catch her attention. Rosalie noticed him and approached with a warm smile. At 33, she was the oldest of his wife's former friends and someone Joseph held in high esteem, especially since she was already married. Rosalie had an exceptional ability to ease tense situations with her composed demeanor. Her striking, dark, wavy hair and fair skin added to her appeal. While she wasn't particularly skilled at chess, her charm and long legs more than compensated. Her husband, Tyler, often referred to her as a blessing, a sentiment Joseph wholeheartedly agreed with. Seated across from him, Rosalie began by expressing her gratitude. "Thank you for taking the time, Joseph. I know how busy you are. It means a lot that you're here," she said, meeting his eyes. Joseph nodded. "It's no problem, Rosalie, though I have to admit meeting without Karen feels a bit unusual. Is this about her birthday next month?" Rosalie's expression darkened, and a flicker of sadness appeared in her eyes. "It's more serious than that, Joseph," she said. "I've seen the strength of your bond with Karen, and that's why I'm here. If it helps preserve your marriage, I'm willing to put our friendship on the line." Joseph felt a wave of shock, momentarily convinced this was some elaborate joke. "You can't be serious," he replied, his tone edged with disbelief. But Rosalie's demeanor remained earnest. "This isn't a joke, Joseph. Karen has been struggling ever since you started that new project 3 months ago. She confided in me after a few drinks. She feels neglected and thinks your marriage has become monotonous, like you're just going through the motions." Their conversation was briefly interrupted by a waiter taking their orders. Rosalie requested a Cobb salad and iced tea, while Joseph wrestled with the implications of her words. Karen had always been reserved, and her silence over their 8 years of marriage had been a source of comfort, a sign of trust. If she had been unhappy, Joseph believed they would have talked about it. Yet here he was, blindsided. In a hushed voice, he asked, "Has she been unfaithful?" Rosalie quickly shook her head. "Not as far as I know. Karen is usually very open about these things, which makes her recent behavior all the more confusing. She's just lost confidence, Joseph." Rosalie went on to explain that Karen's feelings of being overwhelmed had resonated with their circle of friends. Unfortunately, Rosalie's sister, Gail, had suggested infidelity as a way to cope with dissatisfaction. Although Karen initially dismissed the idea, Rosalie feared Gail's words might have planted dangerous doubts. Joseph's thoughts spiraled. Could Karen truly remain loyal? Despite the discomfort of Rosalie's revelations, he appreciated her honesty. The conversation shifted to Aaron Hill, a colleague who had shown interest in Karen. According to Rosalie, Aaron was notorious for pursuing women without regard for their marital status, and had recently turned his attention to Karen. While Karen denied encouraging his advances, she had chosen not to confront him directly. "She says they're just friends," Rosalie explained. "But when I asked if she'd behave the same way if you were there, she admitted she wouldn't. She feels invisible to you, Joseph." Rosalie's words weighed heavily on Joseph. Had he been so preoccupied with work that he failed to notice his wife's struggles? As Rosalie started eating, Joseph sipped his lemonade, lost in thought. Why would Karen risk their relationship for fleeting attention? Though not naturally possessive, Joseph recognized that his inattention might have driven her to seek validation elsewhere. For several minutes they sat in silence, Joseph grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. He felt both betrayed and remorseful. While Karen's actions were difficult to accept, he couldn't ignore his role in the disconnect. Perhaps if he had been more attentive, none of this would have unfolded. By keeping her flirtations hidden, she was effectively deceiving him. Nevertheless, despite her dishonesty, he decided to tackle the issue head-on, planning to confront her about the concerns that had been weighing on him. He hoped that if she chose honesty and agreed to cut ties with Aaron, they could navigate through this together. As long as nothing irreversible had happened over the past 3 weeks, he believed there was still a chance to mend their relationship. This determination gave him a sense of steadiness and readiness to face whatever came next. Rosalie met his eyes with an expression of empathy. "This is where things take a darker turn, Joseph," she began. 3 weeks ago we went to the Red Horse Bar for some dancing. Aaron and his friends joined our group and everyone seemed to be having a great time. Karen drank more than she typically does, with Aaron constantly buying her drinks, which led to her becoming seriously intoxicated. I took her to the restroom, and it was obvious she was far more inebriated than I had realized. When she came out, she was holding her underwear in her hand, saying she wanted to feel free. I chalked it up to the alcohol and guided her back to our table. I tried persuading Hannah and Gail to help me get Karen back to my place to avoid her going home like that. But before we could leave, I saw Karen and Aaron laughing together, getting close, and even mimicking intimate moves on the dance floor. After the dancing ended, everything became a blur. At one point, I saw Karen slip her underwear into Aaron's pocket, making everyone around them laugh. Aaron leaned in for a deep kiss, and to my astonishment, Karen didn't resist. Someone even recorded it on their phone. I wished she had pushed him away, but she didn't. Joseph's face froze in shock. Seeing his reaction, Rosalie quickly apologized and elaborated further. He excused himself, stumbling over his words, and locked himself in the restroom to compose himself. Splashing cold water on his face, he gripped the sink tightly as memories rushed through his mind. Memories of Karen coming home late, often at 2:30 a.m., after nights when Rosalie claimed she stayed to ensure Karen didn't drive drunk. He had been grateful to Rosalie for looking out for her, but now he couldn't ignore the sense of betrayal. He thought about their recent moments of intimacy and wondered if Karen had been thinking of someone else during those times. Gathering himself, he returned to the table, still shaken, but determined to uncover more. Rosalie's sympathetic expression remained, but he wasn't sure how to proceed. His untouched sandwich sat before him as he pressed her for further details. Rosalie spoke candidly. "That's all I know, Joseph. The last few gatherings were at Hannah's, and I thought Karen had distanced herself from Aaron. But just yesterday I saw them speaking again. When I approached, they immediately stopped, and I couldn't tell what was really happening between them." She added, "I felt you should know because Karen doesn't seem to listen to us anymore." When the waiter brought the bill, Joseph quickly reached for it, fumbling for his credit card. "I need to see how they interact," he said, formulating a plan. "This Thursday you're all going to the Red Square Bar, right? I'll observe from a distance." He paused when he noticed Rosalie's concerned expression. "What is it?" he asked. Rosalie explained, "Hannah has a doctor's appointment early Friday, and Gail is traveling to Florida to visit her brother. If Karen decides to go, she'll be going alone." She reached across the table and gave his hand a gentle squeeze. "I'm truly sorry," she said. "I know this is incredibly hard for you. If you need someone to talk to, here's my home number. Tyler and I are here for you. He's a marriage counselor. Maybe he can offer some guidance. Joseph thanked her, genuinely appreciating her openness despite the painful revelations. "You've been a good friend," he said sincerely. "I'm not sure what lies ahead, but I'm grateful for your support." After paying the bill, he left, his mind swirling with thoughts. Earlier that day, he had achieved a significant accomplishment at work. His team had secured a dependable supply chain with a startup in Harrisburg, reducing their preparation time by 2 months and ensuring consistent deliveries despite logistical hurdles. The project's success promised substantial savings for the military and likely a bonus for Joseph, along with an enhanced reputation. Yet his personal crisis overshadowed any sense of pride or joy. Determined to regain control, Joseph resolved to dig deeper. Though he couldn't access Karen's work email and doubted they'd use it due to HR monitoring, he attempted to log into her Yahoo account but found nothing suspicious. He considered the possibility of a hidden account or other means of communication, and even thought about installing surveillance devices to gather evidence. Despite his limited technological skills, he began crafting a plan to uncover the truth and determine whether their marriage could be salvaged. That evening, Karen had already picked up their daughter, Whitney, from her parents' house and asked Joseph to bring Chinese takeout. When he asked how she was feeling, she replied, "After 10 years of marriage, you should know I love you." He replied with a hint of sarcasm, "Just checking to make sure everything's good." She requested an extra dish, and though Joseph usually cherished family time, the weight of recent revelations dampened his enthusiasm. He reflected on how rare it was for him to be home early on a Friday, and acknowledged that Karen might have felt neglected, though he didn't see that as an excuse for her behavior. When he walked into the house, he saw Karen reaching for a bottle of wine. For a moment, he couldn't help but admire her beauty. At 33, she still exuded an effortless femininity, her petite figure and natural curves captivating even in casual clothing. She turned to him with a bright smile that momentarily softened the storm in his heart. "I'm glad you're home," she said warmly, kissing him. "How was work?" "It went well," he replied. "We made a breakthrough that will finish the project a month ahead of schedule. I know I've been away a lot, but you and Whitney are always my priority. I hope you understand that." He searched her face for any trace of guilt or remorse, but found her expression difficult to read. Frustrated by his inability to gauge her feelings, he reminded himself of his commitment to honesty and directness. Those values had guided him well for 34 years, and he saw no reason to abandon them now. "Oh, my love," Karen said, her tone unreadable. "We hold deep affection for you and genuinely empathize with your situation. I wish you could be present more often, but I understand this is just a temporary phase. Even so, I appreciate your recognition." Her eyes shimmered as if tears were about to fall. Was she truly moved, or could it have been an act? "And what advantage do you see in finishing the project ahead of schedule?" she asked while unpacking food containers from her bag. "Primarily, it'll mean a sizable bonus added to my paycheck. The exact amount hasn't been disclosed yet, but it's expected to be substantial. Beyond that, successfully completing this government contract could pave the way for more opportunities for the company," he explained. "As a project manager, I can facilitate valuable opportunities for contractors in need of my expertise. If all goes according to plan, this could be highly rewarding," he continued, fumbling with chopsticks as he tried to eat sweet and sour pork before switching to a fork. "Did I not mention this to you before?" he asked between bites. "Not that I recall, dear," she answered. "I remember you mentioning a significant confidential contract that sounded promising, but we haven't really caught up on it since then," she said with a tinge of sadness, her tone shifting to something more upbeat. "But it sounds like my husband will be back soon," she added with a cheerful note. He glanced at her and asked, "So, which bar are you and your friends heading to tomorrow night?" "Maybe I should swing by after work to ensure you get home safely," he suggested casually. "We're planning to check out the Red Horse Bar and do some dancing with friends, but we'll likely be done before you're off work," she replied. Just then, Whitney finished her egg roll and asked her father for a bedtime story. Setting his plate aside, he rinsed it in the sink and carried his daughter to the living room. For the next hour, He read one story after another until she fell asleep. From the couch, he heard soft snores and noticed his wife curled up with a book in her lap. Carefully, he scooped up his sleeping daughter and carried her upstairs to tuck her in. Ensuring she was snug under the covers, he stepped back, tears welling up as he contemplated the struggles they might face in the days ahead. He hoped his daughter would cherish these peaceful family moments rather than the challenges looming on the horizon. After wiping his eyes, he tiptoed back downstairs to find his wife still dozing on the couch. He kissed her gently on the lips and draped a blanket over her to keep her warm. Then, he headed to their bedroom to retrieve her phone, which was charging on the nightstand. Unlocking it, he began scrolling through her messages. It didn't take long for him to locate what he was looking for. As he skimmed through their exchanges over the past 3 months, one message caught his attention. "Hello, pretty girl. It was fun watching you at the girls' dance last night," Aaron had written. She had responded, "Joseph works late on Thursdays, and Whitney stays with the in-laws, so we had a little bachelorette party. Your husband seems like a good guy to let you have fun," Aaron had replied. "Yes, he's amazing," she affirmed. The conversation stayed light for a while until another exchange drew his eye. "Rosalie mentioned our lunch breaks today," she had written. "I was annoyed, but she had a point." Aaron agreed. "That's true. We don't want to give off the wrong impression," she acknowledged. "And I realize I shouldn't share all my problems with another man." Aaron reassured her, "I understand, but if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. We could even go out for dinner, strictly as friends." Joseph couldn't recall her bringing up any of this to him. Perhaps it was during the time he had been so consumed with sourcing food-grade stainless steel for his project that he wouldn't have noticed if the world had ended around him. The messages seemed innocent enough, but to Joseph it was evident that Aaron had been flirting. How could she not see it? As he scrolled further, another set of messages surfaced. "You need to return them today," one read. "What are you talking about?" she replied. "You know my friends are upset with me and I can't blame them. If Joseph finds out I've been acting inappropriately, he might leave me." Aaron's response was unsettling. "So you don't want me to show him the video?" She had panicked. "I can't let anyone at work see this. Sam recorded the video, but I'll make sure he deletes it. You owe me." Aaron agreed. "I can't lose Joseph, not after last night." "What happened last night?" she had asked. "Was he upset that you came home drunk?" "No," she replied. "Something happened that changed everything." Aaron had mocked. "So, after dancing with me, you begged your husband for forgiveness?" "You're disgusting," she shot back. "Last night was special because Joseph and I love each other. Now give me my underwear back and delete that video." Joseph's stomach churned as he read the messages. How often had she gone to hotel bars with other men under the guise of friendship? What other outcome could there be but the unraveling of their marriage? How could she not think about the idea of intimacy? After shutting off his phone and plugging it into the charger, he stripped off his clothes and slipped into bed, the space beside him empty. Sleep refused to come that night. When Thursday finally rolled around, she descended the stairs wearing the little black dress she always chose for their nights out. She looked breathtaking. Seeing him at the dining table startled her. "I didn't expect you to be home this early," she said, her voice faintly unsteady. "We need to talk, Karen," he said, his tone calm but deliberate. "This isn't something we can put off. Sit down." She hesitated, but then took a seat, her fingers twitching as she reached for his hand. He pulled away. "I know there's no bachelorette party tonight," he began evenly, "and I know about Aaron Hill." Her lips parted as if to respond, but his fist struck the table, silencing her. "Don't," he said firmly. "Listen," he continued, his voice brimming with restrained fury. "You don't get to interrupt until I've said my piece." Karen shrank back in her chair, tears already glistening in her eyes. His gaze was piercing as he went on. "I know you kissed him during lunch. I know you danced with him at the Red Horse Bar. I know you slipped off your underwear and gave it to him after a few flirty moves on the dance floor. I know your sudden affection for me 3 weeks ago wasn't genuine. It was excitement from your connection with him. And tonight, You're planning to meet him at the hotel bar where he has a table ready. Whether or not you've gone all the way with him, I don't know. But nothing's stopping you, is there?" He paused, taking a moment to collect himself, though his voice remained heavy with hurt. "Karen, you've betrayed me. You've lied, kept secrets, and behaved recklessly. I'm heartbroken, and I don't know if I can trust you again. Honestly, I'm not even sure I want to save this marriage, but for the sake of our family, I'm giving you 3 options." He raised one finger. "Option 1, leave. Go to him. It doesn't matter whether you cross the line tonight or not. If you choose him, this marriage is over, and I won't fight to fix it." Then he lifted a second finger. "Option 2, spend tonight with me. Convince me, if you think you can, that our marriage is still worth fighting for. But be warned, my trust is almost gone." Finally, he raised a third finger. "Option 3, take me to meet him. Right there in front of me. Tell him he's out of your life for good. Afterward, I'll need a private conversation with him for 15 minutes. Just us. If you've kept things innocent, I promise to give this marriage everything I have. If not, we're done." Her face turned ashen, and for a moment it looked like she might be sick. His ultimatum lingered in the tense air, and time seemed to stand still. When she finally found her voice, it was shaky. "Joseph, I'm sorry for everything. We need to talk more, but about tonight, who's driving, you or me?" Her response caught him off guard. He'd anticipated deflection or denial. The fact that she agreed to meet him was unexpected, though the hurt was still fresh. Without hesitation, he grabbed the car keys and followed her out. Opening the passenger door, he waited as she climbed in, teetering on the brink of tears. As he started the car and drove, she turned to him, her voice barely a whisper. "I've destroyed everything, haven't I?" "Yes, Karen," he replied, his eyes fixed on the road. "You have." "What can I do to fix this?" she asked, desperation creeping into her tone. He thought for a moment, then spoke. "Start with total honesty. No more hiding, no more lying. You'll have to find a way to rebuild the trust you've broken, and I won't sugarcoat it. That's going to be incredibly hard for you. But trust isn't something I damaged. You did." After a pause, he added, "And Aaron? He's out of your life completely. If we move forward, you'll cut all ties. No chatting at work, no casual meetings. If he shows up at the same place as you, leave. If you can't, call me. No drinks, no gifts, no contact. And tonight, when we get back, you'll tell me everything. I'll also admit my faults. I've been too focused on work. I'll take responsibility for that. Share your grievances too, and we'll start counseling. Your choice of therapist or someone Tyler recommends." As Joseph finished speaking, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face going pale. "It's him," she murmured. "He's asking where I am." Wordlessly, Joseph held out his hand. She surrendered the phone, and he began scrolling through her messages. One text read, "Hi, I've booked a room with a jacuzzi. Maybe we can relax after lunch. Bring a bikini." Another followed. "You can't get me drunk enough for a hot bath. I'm not bringing a bikini. He'll notice." And then, "Maybe you won't need one." He handed the phone back to her, his expression unreadable. She stared at the screen, then lowered her head in shame. "Do you understand how devastating these messages are?" he asked quietly. "Today alone you'd planned to meet him. How much worse does it get if I read more?" Karen's sobs filled the car as the weight of her actions bore down on her. Joseph's voice, though steady, carried the full weight of his pain. "Do you see how this has obliterated my trust? Do you grasp the enormity of what you've done?" She wept openly, her tears a reflection of the damage that could no longer be undone. "Joseph, I swear all I had in mind tonight was dinner. Nothing more," Karen pleaded, her voice unsteady. But Joseph's expression remained stony, his skepticism clear. "Oh, really? And was giving him your underwear part of that just dinner plan? Like you did a few weeks back?" His tone cut through her like a blade. Karen's already pale face seemed to drain of any remaining color. "Karen, we're almost there," Joseph said tersely, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Fix your makeup and prepare whatever you're planning to say to Aaron. Spare me the theatrics." He flipped down the sun visor and pulled a napkin from the glove compartment, handing it to her. Karen inhaled deeply, dabbing at her tear-streaked cheeks before carefully reapplying her mascara. In a voice steadied by sheer effort, she finally broke the silence. "Joseph, I understand why you believe Aaron's been manipulating me. When you brought it up, it made me realize you might be right. But how could I have been so blind? Despite my recent lapses in judgment, I'm not foolish. I've turned down advances from men far more attractive and successful than him. Why would Aaron target me?" Joseph shook his head, his tone calm but resolute. "Karen, you're intelligent and beautiful, but that doesn't make you invulnerable to deceit. Imagine this. If I told you I met a random woman at a bar and we were just having dinner, how would you react? You'd be furious, wouldn't you?" Karen's face flushed slightly, a sign of her regaining some composure. "I made a mistake. I see that now, and I'm grateful for the chance to make amends." She leaned toward him, attempting to kiss him, but Joseph turned just enough so her lips grazed his cheek instead. "This isn't something I can forgive easily. Maybe not at all," he stated bluntly. Karen blinked, startled by his coldness. Joseph was rarely so distant. "I hope we can work through this," she said softly. "What do you want me to tell him?" As they pulled into the restaurant's parking lot, Joseph shut off the engine and took a moment to gather his thoughts. "Say whatever you feel you need to, Karen. But understand this. You've put our marriage in jeopardy. If this doesn't change, maybe our daughter will spend Thanksgiving with you and Christmas with me. Now let's get this over with." Karen exhaled deeply and stepped out of the car, her shoulders slightly slumped. As they walked toward the restaurant entrance, she reached for Joseph's hand. He didn't pull away, but neither did he return the gesture. Inside, a red-haired hostess greeted them with a polite smile. "Do you have a reservation?" Before Joseph could respond, Karen interjected. "We're meeting someone who's already here." The hostess nodded and offered to guide them. Karen discreetly gestured toward a man seated at the back, absorbed in his phone. She walked ahead with purpose, Joseph trailing slightly behind. The man looked up as they approached, his face breaking into a smile that quickly faded when he noticed Joseph. His grin faltered, and his eyes narrowed. Karen stopped in front of him but remained standing, her voice steady and unwavering. "Aaron, my husband is concerned about our interactions, and after reflecting on it, I share his worries. I've betrayed his trust, and I'm committed to repairing that. This is the last time we'll be speaking. Don't call, text, or contact me in any way. Tomorrow, I'll report this entire situation to HR and make it clear that any future attempts to involve me in personal matters will be unwelcome. I'll leave you and Joseph to talk now." She turned to Joseph, kissed him lightly on the cheek, and whispered an apology before walking toward the bar. Relief swept over Joseph as he sat across from Aaron. He studied the man, well-dressed, dark-haired, and lean, someone who might be considered attractive. Although Joseph wasn't skilled at judging other men's appearances, Aaron's self-assured demeanor was hard to miss. Breaking the silence, Joseph spoke, his voice measured. "So, was surprising her with a bikini your idea of a clever move?" Aaron smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You really think she's told you everything?" "Actually, yes," Joseph replied evenly. "I've known her for 10 years, been married to her for 8. I know her better than some guy who's been hovering around for 3 months." A waiter approached, interrupting the tense exchange. Joseph ordered a double Johnny Walker Black on the rocks. Aaron's smirk widened as he gestured toward the glass of wine already waiting at the table. "She has a knack for keeping a man happy," he remarked provocatively. Joseph's calm smile didn't waver. "That might be true, but I doubt you'd know from experience." He let the words hang in the air before adding, "Need proof? Photos, perhaps?" Aaron chuckled, clearly trying to provoke him, but Joseph remained composed. "No photos. If things had gotten that far, you wouldn't have needed to spike her drink. What's the go-to substance for predators these days?" Joseph's words hit their mark. Aaron's confident facade cracked and his body stiffened. Joseph leaned in, his tone dropping to an icy whisper. "You're nothing but a coward, and part of me wants to deal with you right now, but I've got a better idea. 3 choices. First, you apologize to my wife, resign tomorrow, and leave town. I'll let you go in peace. Second, you confess to the police that you drugged her. Do your time and stay out of our lives. Third, We sign up for boxing lessons. In a month, we'll step into the ring. No rules, no limits. After that, you disappear." The waiter returned with Joseph's drink. He took a long sip, the warmth of the whiskey grounding him. "Your move, Aaron. Make it count." Aaron's lips curled into a mocking grin, as though the choices before him were beneath consideration. In response, Joseph mirrored the expression, his glare sharpening into something menacing. "Because," Joseph began, his voice edged with menace, "you wouldn't want to spend the rest of your pathetic life jumping at shadows. Every walk to your car in the dark would feel like a gamble, wondering if tonight's the night I, or someone working for me, decides to settle the score." He leaned in closer, lowering his voice into a chilling growl. "Every creak at your front door would make your stomach churn, fearing that I or an associate might burst in and make your nightmares real. Every drink you order could hold a threat, the kind that leaves you helpless and exposed before facing the final reckoning. You won't risk it. You're spineless, just like your wife said when I spoke with her last night," he finished, twisting the verbal dagger. Aaron's pale face darkened with a flush of anger as the words sank in. Meanwhile, Joseph casually took a sip of his whiskey, his gaze steady. Aaron's fingers twitched as he subtly reached for his pocket, fumbling to activate the voice recorder on his phone. Though the motion was nearly imperceptible, Joseph caught it and cursed himself for not anticipating such a move. "You think you're clever, planning to drug my wife?" Aaron spat, his voice low and venomous. "Do you really think I'll just stand by and let you ruin everything?" The tension hit its peak as Joseph abruptly grabbed Aaron's collar, dragging him forward. The cramped space didn't allow for much leverage, but the crunch of Aaron's nose under the impact was sickeningly satisfying. Aaron howled, clutching his face, and began spewing threats about involving the police. "Go ahead," Joseph said icily. "Call them. Let's see what they think about the drugs in your drink and the confession I've got recorded. You're a fool." It wasn't long before the police arrived, having been in the area on a break. They moved quickly, collecting statements, analyzing the glass, and uncovering a small bag of white powder stashed near a vent. When questioned further, Aaron clammed up, demanding an attorney and refusing to answer. Joseph handed over his phone, which contained a damning recording of Aaron discussing drugs and a planned assault. After hours of questioning, Joseph and Karen were allowed to leave. The officers praised Joseph for his quick thinking, crediting him with averting a potential tragedy. Karen, though visibly shaken, expressed heartfelt gratitude to the officers. Meanwhile, Aaron remained in custody. Using Karen's phone, the police contacted Joseph's parents to inform them of the incident. The news brought them some relief, prompting them to care for Whitney and treat her to a day at the zoo to lift her spirits. Once Joseph and Karen returned home, they sat quietly in the car for a moment of shared understanding. Karen unfastened her seatbelt and leaned into Joseph, wrapping him in a tight hug. Her tears soaked into his shoulder as she wept softly. Joseph let her cry, offering silent comfort before gently pulling back. "Karen," he said softly, "we need to talk about all of this, but not tonight. We both need rest if we're going to face this properly." Karen nodded, wiping her eyes. "You're right. Rest sounds good. Can I sleep beside you tonight?" Joseph hesitated briefly before nodding. The next morning, he woke to find her clinging to him in her sleep, a moment that was both comforting and bittersweet. As he got up, he gave her a light pat and suggested they go for a walk after breakfast to ease into the difficult discussions ahead. Over pancakes at a local diner, the atmosphere lightened. They talked about Whitney's zoo trip and made tentative plans to visit Joseph's parents. By the time they returned home, some of the tension had lifted. However, as they sat at the kitchen table, Joseph's demeanor grew serious. "We need to address this," he said firmly. "I won't rehash who Aaron is. You know what he's done. But he told me you called me weak and said he satisfied you. Is there any truth to that?" Karen's expression twisted in shock. "Absolutely not. The only interaction I had with him was that horrible night at the Red Horse. I know I acted poorly, but I never crossed any lines." Joseph's jaw tightened. "How am I supposed to believe that? You lied about meeting him recently, downplayed the incident, and kept your history with him hidden. You haven't been honest with me." Karen sighed deeply, regret evident in her eyes. "I see that now. I'll do whatever it takes to regain your trust. If it helps, I'm willing to take a lie detector test." Joseph's eyebrows rose. "You'd go that far?" She nodded with conviction. "Yes, name the time and place. Ask me anything." Her sincerity gave Joseph pause. He knew lie detectors weren't perfect, but her willingness to take one was a gesture of good faith. "All right," he said at last. "I'll arrange it. It might take some time, but it's a step forward." Karen managed a faint smile. "It's a start. We'll figure this out together." Joseph hesitated before pressing on. "There's one more thing. How do we move forward? How do we rebuild after this?" He exhaled sharply, the pain of her past lies resurfacing. "You told me it was just a friendly dinner, but discovering otherwise broke me. It felt like betrayal." Tears welled in Karen's eyes. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. When you were consumed with work, I felt invisible. It's no excuse for lying, but I need you to understand where my head was." Joseph nodded slowly. "I'll arrange the test. For now, let's focus on rebuilding what we can." Karen agreed, and they sat quietly, both holding on to the hope that their efforts might heal the rift between them. She introduced the idea of exploring affection outside our relationship, and I didn't want that to seem like treachery while you were deeply immersed in your work. Over time, I started to realize that the fulfillment I sought might lie beyond what we shared. And then Aaron came into the picture. At first, I didn't fully understand what was happening, but he had a way of making me feel valued. He genuinely wanted to know about my life, my family, and my passions, often steering our conversations toward me. As Joseph wrestled with his feelings, she watched him carefully. It wasn't until Rosalie accidentally bumped into me during lunch that I truly grasped the magnitude of my choices. I had turned to Aaron to fill what felt like an insurmountable void between us, even though I still yearned to repair our bond. That chaotic evening was never meant to unfold the way it did. I hadn't planned for Aaron or his friends to show up. They came uninvited and before anyone else arrived. Aaron even brought drinks, including some for me. Before long, I was more inebriated than I'd ever been. My judgment faltered, leading to decisions I deeply regret. While you're aware of what happened that night, we also shared a moment of closeness that has left me torn. How could I act so recklessly with him and still hold on to the beauty of what we shared? She paused, poured herself a glass of water, took a few steadying sips, and continued. And then, a video surfaced. "I knew you'd be furious, and you have every right to be. If the situation were reversed, if you had kissed another woman while drunk, I'd be beside myself with anger too. What made it worse was that after our intimate moment, I allowed thoughts of someone else to intrude. Hoping to hide my mistake, I kept Aaron in my life, feeling some misplaced sense of duty. When my friends canceled plans, I foolishly agreed to have dinner with him. That night, feeling isolated and certain you'd be home late, I made a terrible decision, one I'll regret forever. The trust that was the foundation of our relationship crumbled because of my actions. Tears streamed down her face, though she managed to remain composed. Joseph, however, sensed she was withholding something even more significant. "Oh my God," he whispered. Though they had not yet reconciled, Joseph believed there might still be hope if they both committed to rebuilding. Karen agreed, saying she was willing to give everything if Joseph was too. They sought help through counseling, a step that proved transformative for Joseph. It was during these sessions that he realized he'd never truly understood the woman he'd married. One day, their counselor suggested Karen undergo a lie detector test. Though she agreed, Joseph noticed a flicker of reluctance in her expression. The results confirmed his fears. Karen had been dishonest. Determined to uncover the whole truth, Joseph reached out to Aaron, hoping to see the video Aaron had mentioned. Their meeting was tense, and Aaron demanded Joseph drop the charges against him in exchange for transparency. Reluctantly, Joseph agreed, knowing he needed the truth to move forward. That same day, a package arrived containing a video from one of Aaron's friends. As Joseph watched it on his computer, his heart shattered. The footage revealed Karen, Aaron, and two other men in a hotel room, filmed on a phone. Though Karen was clearly intoxicated, her participation appeared consensual, and she seemed to enjoy the moment. Devastated, Joseph retreated to his office and changed the locks while Karen was at work. Consumed by rage and betrayal, he fantasized about revenge. With their daughter staying with his parents, Joseph set his plan in motion. He uploaded the incriminating video to various adult websites and spread it across social media platforms. His intent was clear: to destroy Karen's reputation completely while shielding their daughter from the consequences. In the weeks that followed, Joseph prepared to leave the state with their daughter. Despite his agreement with Aaron, he never withdrew the charges. Karen, now living with her parents, was left to deal with the wreckage of her life. The divorce was finalized swiftly. Karen lost everything: her husband, her daughter, her home, and her financial stability. Stripped of her former life, she faced public humiliation. Friends, family, and even strangers learned of her scandalous behavior. Karen's life spiraled out of control. She was fired from her job and struggled to find new employment due to her ruined reputation. Her despair drove her to excessive drinking, and she frequently stayed away from home. One night, in a state of intoxication and desperation, she decided to visit Rosalie, hoping to confide in her about the destruction she'd caused in her own life. But fate intervened. Driving her father's car, she lost control, and the vehicle rolled multiple times. The horrific accident claimed Karen's life. At her funeral, Joseph and their daughter Whitney stood silently by her grave, wrestling with the tragic loss of a woman who had once been part of their family. To Joseph, Karen's downfall was the consequence of her own decisions, but the tragedy of it all left an unshakable imprint on their lives. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.